Let's talk about the pace of the change of AI. Are we overestimating it, underestimating it?
I don't think we're overestimating anything. I actually think that it goes beyond that. I think that it's moving extremely quick. I think that the problem is once this hype period is over, you actually have to try and keep pace with implementation and actually spend time defining your problem and then apply the technology as it comes out. So you can skip the technology that was yesterday and use the one that's there today.
Welcome back to Keys to Real Estate. If you attended the National Settlement Services Summit this year, it was impossible to miss the conversations around artificial intelligence. We heard about AI and fraud prevention, compliance, underwriting, customer communications, and nearly every other corner of the transaction. Even the regulators are using it. But amid all that discussion, a bigger question emerged. How should business leaders actually think about and act around AI? So in this special session recorded live at NS3, I sat down with Ryan Ozonian, who's a Senior Director of Innovation and AI at MyHome, which is a WFG company, and also with Adam Schlesinger, Vice President of Product Underwriting for First American Data and Analytics. Our mission was to move beyond the tools and technology demos and focus in on strategy. We discuss where AI is likely to create real value, where companies are wasting money, how to separate hype from reality, and why understanding your business processes may matter more than understanding the technology itself. It was a great conversation, so let's get right to it. The presenting sponsor for this season of Keys to Real Estate is First American Trust. First American Trust redefines banking for title and escrow companies. They offer innovative solutions that integrate banking functions directly into title and escrow software systems, enhancing operational efficiency and safeguarding financial transactions. At First American Trust, you have direct access to a personal relationship manager who delivers answers in real time. First American Trust is also recognized as an elite provider for the American Land Title Association. As a wholly owned subsidiary of First American Financial Corporation, they have roots in real estate tracing back over 135 years and is the only bank owned by a title company. With deep roots, advanced solutions, and a commitment to real relationships, they are setting a new standard for the industry. The future of banking for title and escrow starts with First American Trust. Visit firstamtrust.com to learn more.
Well, we've certainly heard a lot about AI this week. And with all that discussion, we kind of know what is right now, but I kind of wanted to zoom out a little bit with this panel and talk about what does the future of our industry itself look like. And joining me for that today, we have two people that are terrific experts. First is Ryan Ozonian. He's the Senior Director of Innovation and AI at MyHome, and that's a WFG company. And Adam Schlesinger is here, and he's Vice President of Product Underwriting for First American Data and Analytics. So please welcome them. Because certainly when we sat here 5 years ago, we weren't talking about AI this way or any way. So of course it's new and there's uncertainty. There are AI doomers and AI accelerationists, and it can be hard for us mere mortals, us average people, humans, to find our footing, and there's so much that we still don't know. And with that said, 5 years from now, we probably won't even recognize today's challenges or remember what it was like to try to cope with them. So for this session, it's not a tools conversation. We had those earlier in the week, and those are invigorating and exciting. This is more of a decision-making conversation. A conversation to help you all make better business decisions around your engagement with AI. So to kick us off, I'd like to ask you both, when you think about AI right now, are you more concerned about our industry players missing the opportunity or moving too fast?
I can take that, I think, to start. So I think that there's a big percentage of people that just want to be involved in like the scene of AI. Right? Versus actually taking applications or platforms and creating something tangible out of it. Yes, the technology is moving fast, but I feel like that aura of like that feeling of being involved is slowing people down from actually creating tangible product to actually relate to their business process. Does that make sense? So you really have to take the applications that exist and actually make them usable for you and kind of cut out the noise. I feel like we're slowing down because of hype.
Yeah, and I would just add to that while there's so much momentum and frankly also a lot of noise, that doesn't necessitate or that doesn't prevent real progress from being made in the industry. I think the trick is really understanding your core business process, understanding like where the best opportunities for AI implementation exist, and then knowing how to be iterative and experiment quickly to actually validate ROI. And that's a lot trickier than perhaps it just like sounds on paper, but I think you have to start at some point. And if you don't start, the risk of not starting will be worse than the risk of going too fast, to take a slightly alternative viewpoint. I just think you have to like really start engaging with what's possible in a tangible way with measurable results. And then you'll start to, I think, identify those use cases and then really be engaged in the way that Ryan just talked about.
That's fair. All right. Well, I'd like to start looking at where AI actually changes the business. Like Adam, I'll start with you. Where do you believe that AI will materially change the title and settlement workflow and not just incrementally improve it? Some of the things we've heard about this week have been kind of mind-blowing, actually, but where do you spot those biggest first material changes?
So I think the most exciting changes, one I think is well known, and I think the other one is kind of being debated. The first one is all of the tasks in the closing process that require the synthesis of large amounts of data. So think about things like reading lots of documents, extracting data from documents, categorizing documents, or the data that you're extracting from those documents, and then using that to accelerate your workflow. I think the second area, which is there's still more uncertainty around, is how it impacts our ability to communicate to our customers. And I'm not talking about necessarily replacing all of your customer service folks with chatbots and that being, where we just extract all that cost and AI now somehow provides a better customer experience. What I mean is there's going to be a lot more transparency in the data throughout the closing process. And one of the biggest areas of heartburn in real estate, as you all know, is all these different parties that are involved that want to know more about where things are at, right? Like what part of are we at step 4, step 5? Who's on base for step 4? Who's on base for step 5? And having to have a human manually push that process along, or a group of humans, is very difficult while still being super transparent with your customers. And so I see a real customer experience improvement opportunity around communication.
Well, Adam, I'm wondering, so then you mentioned sort of your customer experience, CX for short. Do you think that that area is the most resistant to AI? And the reason I ask is because when AI very first showed up on the scene, the first thing some companies did was automate their customer interface. Oh, ask us a question and get an answer from our title bot. And that seems to me the exact wrong place to start with AI, but yeah. You're the experts. I'd love your opinion.
Yeah, so I think it's super critical to always start with the customer experience and then work backwards into the technology. And so with that use case that Mary just described, that's really, it's a hammer looking for a nail. It's a quick implementation that doesn't actually solve a clear problem that you have and that results in a worse customer experience. And so none of that will add up to either you saving money or you growing your revenue. And so I think you want to be really, really smart and thoughtful and clear about what your business opportunity or problem is, and then think about, are there tasks in that problem space where AI is going to be super powerful? And so if you have a lot of data synthesis, a lot of document review, document extraction, or if it's more of a end-to-end process, like automated communications to let people know where things are at. I think that's where we'll see the most short-term opportunity.
Okay. Most technology people, the last 90 days have been eyes wide, kind of a holy hell at how fast AI, use a large blanket term, is evolving, learning. And at first, I think a lot of us mere mortals thought, oh, that's a great marketing tactic. You'd be amazed at what your product's doing, and people will lean in and be curious. I've come to now understand they're legitimately freaked out, might not be the right word, but also I'm wondering, do you guys think, let's talk about the pace of the change of the AI. Are we overestimating it, underestimating it? What are your thoughts about it?
I don't think we're overestimating anything. I actually think that it goes beyond that. I think that it's moving extremely quick. I think that the problem, again, is once this like hype period is over, you actually have to implement with at least try and keep pace with the technology, because the technology is just moving so fast. It's almost impossible to, obviously, even us tech nerds can't keep up, right? So people have to at least try and keep pace with implementation versus like the hype and reading about things. Actually, spend time, and me and Adam talked about this before this chat, spend time defining your problem and then apply the technology as it comes out. So you can skip the technology that was yesterday and use the one that's there today to help keep pace. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wholly agree. And I think when thinking about like overestimating or underestimating the pace, I think if you look at any of the stuff that's coming out of these frontier models and these now trillion-dollar AI companies, it really is incredible, like what they're capable of. But OpenAI is not going to turn around and like start competing as a title agent for your customers. So I think the safeguard is the real estate industry is very localized. It's highly regulated. Our underlying value proposition is trust and certainty for people's most important transactions of their lives. And so understanding that and having those customer relationships, I think it buys you some time, but it doesn't buy you infinite time.
Yeah.
Like at some point you just have to accept that just like computers, just like the internet, AI is a functional capability that will just be in all of our systems. And figuring out how to use that in a way that makes you more competitive in your markets or target markets is really what's going to, I think, make the difference.
Yeah. And every time you feel scared is wasted time, in my opinion, right? You're creating this fear of, oh, is my data being stolen? Are these companies going to take it and extrapolate it and do X, Y, and Z with it? Every moment you think like that, you're getting behind. So it's almost like this process that you have to just adapt to. It's not easy.
Well, and I'm glad you both mentioned the hype cycle, because for naturally reticent people, like people in our industries tend to be, the hype makes us lean back a lot of times instead of forward. And if you've been in the business for more than 5 minutes, you've been through a few hype cycles of technology is going to change the world and we'll just, use the think system and all of our work will be done for us. So getting past that hype is a bit of a hurdle. But once we do, I'd like to talk about the question of investment a little bit, because most agencies aren't sitting on some big innovation budget. Everybody's making trade-offs of what expenditures, do move the needle, or can I live without? And so For people out here that are owners and leaders, how should they think about prioritizing their AI spend, especially right now, versus everything else that's competing for their budgets?
That's a great question. My strategy is basically to have internal AI resources and build a team and spend against that team from a salary standpoint versus spending a lot on plug and play. Because as that plug and play accelerates, you're out of control basically of what things are going to cost. So having an internal team and spending against that is very important in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to give two answers that sort of contradict themselves. One is, and I already mentioned this at the top, but learning how to do quick experimentation with clear metrics that help you define what success looks like, whether you're testing what a vendor's providing or using their data from their testing against yours, or doing it all yourself. I think that's a skill for the future that everyone needs to have, because the change is only going to accelerate. And in order to be really comfortable in making decisions in this time of great rapid transformation, you have to be able to independently validate your ideas or someone else's ideas. And the good news is the tools to do that are rapidly being democratized through companies like Anthropic and OpenAI. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have to spend a lot of money to start to feel out where in your organization AI can potentially make a difference, and whether it's worth really building your own solutions or going to a vendor. And I'll give you just one quick example of something that I was surprised by at First American, but so happy that we did. Was last year we gave everyone professional ChatGPT accounts in the entire company, and we tried to give them, some guardrails, some guidance. We did training sessions, and a lot of people just never even opened their accounts. But then there were small pockets of people who independently started using the tools, figured out what they were good at, and then actually started to come up with ideas for things that we could build and invest in. And that's been a super powerful kind of bottoms up way that we've figured out how to implement AI. And again, it's usually it's very focused on a single problem, maybe even for a certain market, but we prove the value and then we can make the investment decision.
So I'm wondering where you have seen wasted investment in AI, or at least premature investment. And I gave the example before of what I would consider a poor investment, which is an AI agent handling your customer service. To me, that's the last place I want to. But where else are you seeing some mistakes, if you're seeing any?
I think in random trial processes, I think that there's, a lot of employees per se, or, customers that, see certain ideas through advertisement or whatever it might be, and they immediately invest. So I got to be a part of that. And they start just subscribing and spending money on things that they didn't really know how it was going to work for them or their business process. So I think that there's been quite a bit of wasted money there. I think that goes back to define the problem you want to solve, understand the technology that you're purchasing, make sure it fits against your budget and it's actually going to produce some kind of ROI for you, whether it's on a small level or a large level. But it can't just be trial and error and spend money, because you just keep wasting money all over the place. I mean, there's too many different products coming out every day.
Yeah, and that's where I differentiate good experimentation versus random trial and error. So again, I think that you can try things in a way where you're getting good data back and you're actually making better decisions for your company. But that has to be really thoughtful. And then I think the other areas where I think we've seen waste is where we try to scale too fast. and the cost of scaling gets further ahead than our ability to prove value. And I know that, we've had to self-correct in several areas just because of that reason.
Well, and I've heard it from agents frequently. I've heard it a couple times this week. And what they say goes something like this: we spend thousands of dollars every month to keep our systems locked down, to keep bad software, malware crawlers out. And now we're being asked to open up our systems to AI. And like somebody was telling me in the hallway the other day that it took them 4 days to try to get an AI note taker that somebody else installed on a Zoom meeting that they attended to get it out of their system, because every time they had a meeting, that thing was firing up. And so I'd love it if you'd help people understand how to kind of resolve that tension that we inherently have it, and we're not sure how to talk about it or how to feel about it.
So I think that if you're going to be using like a vendor or you're going to be creating from scratch, I mean, those will be different experiences, but there is an element that you got to cross your T's and you got to dot your I's, and you got to know what I's and T's you're responsible for. For First American, we have a bank, and so we're regulated by the Federal Reserve, which means there's this elaborate model risk management governance process that we have to adhere to, and we're audited against that externally. So we have very well-defined process that also does make us slow, and it does cost a lot. And we weighed the benefits on whether having a bank is worth it, despite having to slow down on some innovation. And I think it's been a good call for us in the long term. That said, if you're an agent, I think the questions you want to be asking are really around, where does what data is mine versus what data am I potentially giving up to a vendor? Or if there's any change in the security of that data, like what does that look like? Do I have someone on my team I can trust who can vet that just to make sure that you're not stepping into something unintentionally? So I think there's just kind of some good governance practices that probably don't change whether it's AI or just software that you're buying, where you're putting your data on there and that you would want to follow. The last thing I'll say is most of us put our data on the cloud today. So if you have concerns about the security of my data, they're almost certainly going to be governed in the same way, through the contractual obligations that you have and vice versa with that cloud service. And so, you could definitely ask the question around, you're not going to train on my data, are you? But if you're working with a company as big as like OpenAI, they may not even answer you.
Yeah.
So I think just being realistic about what you can control and knowing what you must control.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up governance. I mean, I think that's the next big thing, right? As agentic AI moves ahead and you have all these basically bots doing things for people, who is to blame at that point? You can't blame a robot. So then robots are going to control robots, right? Governance within agentic AI is going to govern itself. And eventually there's going to have to be a human to create checks and balances. But how many humans is that? So it gets quite confusing in that sense. But who's going to govern what is, I think, like the next big thing.
Yeah, can I respond to that?
Please
Because
do.
I think that's a really important statement. Who is accountable is a very important question.
Yeah.
And for our company, it guides a lot of the decisions around where we try to focus our AI investment. So we, at least as of right now, we don't want to make underwriting decisions without some sort of human supervision for the coverage that we issue in our transactions. All of the data gathering and the data organization, that's definitely the right place right now based upon what we think is capable, what we think the AI is capable of. But where we're regulated, where we have to be personally accountable or the company has to be accountable. We're avoiding those areas right now.
Yeah.
Well, let's double click on that concept a little bit and spend some more time on it, because we all are in highly regulated industries, and we have this new and essentially unregulated tool that we're trying to embed responsibly in our highly regulated industries at a time when, to your point, the liability for using the tool does not transfer away from us just because we contract with somebody to do this work. Whether or not it's providing title insurance is a different question, or issuing a loan is a sub question. But we are also a high trust industry, a high human trust industry. And so I think a lot of our concern isn't, again, that we're, just saying no to say no, or we've always done it this way. It is those concerns about the liability and the trust and the reputational risk. And so what risks actually are real today and what are just kind of theoretical? Like, can you help sort through some fears versus some tangible things we need to be really looking at?
I think the biggest risk is it comes from the financial side, in my opinion, is to waste a lot of money through basically like token grabs. So AI has the ability to help you in many ways, right? But every word that you put into it, like, goes through an energy source to a data center that actually costs a lot of money to operate. So you're going to keep getting charged, and the more it helps you, the more you're going to get addicted to it or want it or need it for your business process. But they have all the ability to charge whatever the heck they want. And as more people kind of keep utilizing each service, they're going to just, let's say, rip you off if they want to.
They're going to meter it for sure, right?
And your bank account or your budget is just going to it's like, so it's you got to be very careful with. Again, I come back to, like, that's why internal resources, in my opinion, are like a very good strategy versus just like plugging and playing with very expensive items, because you're going to drain your bank account. And that's what scares me.
So Ryan, when you're talking about building internally, are you talking about training open source models on your own servers or computers, or are you talking about building the layer on top of other large language models or other types of AI?
I'm talking about like internal engineering power that can actually understand the metrics behind what you're spending and what you're getting from statistical analysis. Like, what is the ROI of what I'm actually spending against, and how is that technology actually performing for our company? Otherwise, you're just buying, a product.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, right? If you don't have the right people to ensure that you're going to get the most out of your investment, then you're just going to be beholden to
and that's
the
scary.
provider. Yeah.
Well, so AI is a big part of both of your jobs. So sorry if this is unfair, but I'm going to ask you, where personally or professionally are you drawing lines? What won't you hand over to AI yet? Personal or professional, actually.
Oh, my car drives itself, so I got rid of that.
You're done driving? Okay.
Yeah. Personally or within the company? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think there are areas that are really important and also highly regulated that I would still want to use AI, but it's just it's the implementation of that use, right? So I use AI for legal research all the time. But the way that I use it is that I'm getting information back, I'm getting citations, I know enough to know when something looks wrong, and I still, if it's any, like, I'm not filing legal briefs or anything, but if I were, I would then go back and read it. So it's it's an aggregation tool. It's an organizational type use case. What I would not feel comfortable with is saying, AI, show up at court for me and represent me in front of a court of law. Or AI, I'm going to blindly accept whatever medical diagnosis you give me without talking to a doctor. So that's where I try to draw the line, is when there are serious legal, ethical, medical implications. And that's when the human component of that working relationship becomes so critical.
Well, I'm very curious about, so as you guys well know, especially in the title and settlement business, we have a real demographic problem. It's not new, it's more exacerbated than it's been in the past. But if you look around the room, we tend to be pretty silver of the hair or close. And it's always been difficult for us to recruit new talent too. Title and settlement isn't sexy, even after you find out about it, to a lot of people, which I know we're all surprised at that, how they can miss what fun we have every day. So I'm curious, I'd like to know your thoughts about how can AI really help us with that sort of talent gap, or is it going to make it worse? I don't quite know how to think about it, because a lot of times what you hear is, well, that entry-level work, automate that first. Let the computer do that, and then you're released to be the high expertise human being in the equation, and that's fantastic through about one cycle. And then I think a lot of us have questions about how do we grow tomorrow's experts when we're reliant on those tools. So I know that's a lot all in one, but I'd love to talk about staffing with you.
Yeah. I've been trying to bridge that gap for the last year and a half. And, I have a small team of, basically, I call them my kids. It's like, 3 employees that are in their mid-20s, which is great. And how do you get them excited about the industry? Well, I think that the way that I've been doing it and the way that works really well is to gamify things, create scorecards and AI helps with that, right? So basically, it's the most important asset for most people is their top piece of title, right? If you can actually help them understand how well it's protected with an application that AI can constantly score, it's like, okay, today, like, my title's safe. And it just gives you a notification. Constantly checking against whether there's any kind of fraud going on, or, basically it's a safety score. And that gets the younger generation kind of excited, because you're kind of gamifying something and utilizing AI and letting them know that they're protecting someone's most important asset. And I don't know, that's started to work, and I think that it's really cool.
Yeah, so my hot take is that AI will help mitigate the demographic challenge our industry faces, precisely because it is changing the nature of the roles in our industry. So what an escrow officer will do in 5 years is not going to look like what an escrow officer does today. And I believe it's going to start to change pretty rapidly. And I think that what that does is it creates an entry point for someone to learn this new role. It doesn't mean that old escrow is going away. Like the old guard, if you will, of our industry in many different areas, I think they're still going to be extremely valuable, especially in helping on the training aspect of your question. But I think that you can really make the different roles that are needed in this industry very exciting and much less monotonous and kind of like paperworky with what we can do with AI.
That might help us attract and recruit.
Well, that wraps up our first part of our conversation on AI in the future of title, and I hope it brought you some new ways to think about the future of AI in title and settlement. One of the strongest themes from this discussion is that AI is not a strategy in and of itself or by itself, and the organizations finding success are the ones that understand their business problems first and then determine where technology can create measurable value. Now, next week, we'll tackle some of the questions that many leaders are wrestling with right now, like what happens to jobs? How do we attract and develop future talent? Where should humans remain firmly in the loop? And how do we navigate the trust and accountability challenges that come with increasingly powerful technologies? Until next time, thanks for tuning in to Keys to Real Estate from October Research, where knowledge is the competitive advantage.